Welcome to Shut Up and Sit. I'm Yedda Stansel, a consciousness coach and consultant. I'm on a mission to bring mindfulness to the modern world. Each week, we will offer ancient healing practices, real-world examples, and the latest research in neurobiology and behavior change into fun conversation that invites you to wake up your highest self. Now, let's go shut up and sit. Hi everyone, Yedda here, and so glad to be back with you all for episode 13. It's kind of hard to believe that we've been at this for a few weeks now, and I've got a surprise guest for you. Cannot wait to introduce you to her, but before I do, today we're going to be talking about emotions a little bit further into chapter 3 in my book. We did a last episode with one of my clients, Carrie. She talked about emotions, the power of learning the shut up and sit coaching methodology, doing this practice, being a part of this movement, how it's drastically changed her life. And I had to bring my mom back. That's our surprise guest for today. My mom, Austine, is back because, honestly, I think she kind of wants to be the co-host of the show, but I haven't really... I'm still in the question, people. I'm not really quite sure. As I'm getting ready to introduce her, I'm looking over at her show notes. She's already talking about buying a wig. And the heading on her show notes is, I created my own hell. So you guys are in for a real treat today. Mom, welcome back to the show. How are you?
I'm fantastic, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, it's so good to see you. You did your hair. Did you get a facelift since the last show? I don't know what happened, but no kidding, you guys. We did our episode. It was episode 2. Mom told really the story, obviously, of being a 17-year-old mom, pregnant, what it was like to have me as a baby. I had so many of you guys contact me to talk to me about the story. Mom, the story that you shared, your vulnerability of standing in the parking lot with an infant crying, literally standing on your welfare check and your food stamp check, and what that was like. And so the feedback that people have been sending in, and you all as listeners have been great, how inspirational that story was. And I know that you value hearing that, but what our listeners don't know, and I do have to tell on my mom a little bit, we got in the car after we filmed that episode, and do you remember you were like, that was terrible? I don't want anyone to hear or see that. That was awful. And I said, hey, Mom, it's all good. You're experiencing what we call vulnerability hangover, which means you just shared a lot of really in-depth, deep personal stuff. It is really, if you guys have never heard of a vulnerability hangover, I don't know if Brene Brown knows that that's a term, because she's the one that's big in the world right now on vulnerability and shame research. But it's a vulnerability hangover where you go out and you just kind of share parts of yourself. And so I had to encourage Mom that it was all good, that you guys would value her words of wisdom, that she mattered, that, here I was coaching her, walking her off the cliff. And what happened was, it was so beautiful. The feedback we got, Mom, was great. I do have to also tell on my mom that night she called and she said, Yedda, have you pulled us up on YouTube? And I have to tell you, we are putting videos. Obviously, most people are listening to our show right now, and that's awesome. And Robin, our amazing videographer, and Griffin, who's been helping, and Chase, and all these people that have come together to put this whole act together. And Robin's been great as kind of telling us strategically what to do with the videos. We are putting them on YouTube. We're trying to decide what we want to do with them. But I said, no, Mom, I haven't seen them on YouTube. And she goes, you have to pull it up right now. So we got this big, huge smart TV. She's at home on her big, huge smart TV, and we're watching the video of ourselves, and it was kind of cute, and we chuckled. Mom did say that she thought she should buy a wig, and I had to stop her. I was like, no, there's gonna be no wig.
Actually, I think I said, now that I see myself on the big screen, I realize how amazing I really am.
Oh, okay.
I think that's
all
what
right.
I really said.
I'll let you have that one. So we had a lot of laughs about it, and so no, in all seriousness, you all know the story. I wouldn't be here without my mom. You also know that I wouldn't be doing the work that I was doing without my mom. And so much of the book, the content, what we're talking about on the show, Pop came in after your episode. A lot more feedback came in around that one. So I'm loving hearing from you guys on social media. I'm loving hearing from the subscriptions, the ratings, that this is something that matters. It moves me and Mom as well, that when people hear what we have to say, that it's actually helping people.
Yes.
And we knew that. We had an idea because we knew it helped you. We knew it helped me. And now that vulnerability hangover, if you will, it gets easier the more and more you show up, you shut up, you sit down, and you talk. And so I thought it was perfectly appropriate to bring Mom back on this episode, because now that we've moved into chapter 3 and we're talking about emotions, there is a really cool tool in here that's called the emotional guidance scale. And that scale, Mom's going to tell you a little bit about that story. She literally, the image that's in the book, she created that image, and she's going to tell us today how that happened. She's going to talk to us a little bit about what the emotional guidance scale is, how to use it, and really, this isn't taught in the mainstream. And if people knew this, the liberation and the empowerment that you guys are going to receive from this one quick little tool and takeaway, I mean, it's life-changing. And I say that on every show, but everything's my favorite. Everything's life-changing because it is our reality. We wake up every day and we put these tools to work, and that's how it feels. Right, Mom?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, so why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about how you even got to discovering what the emotional guidance scale was, and then how it got created and what all that looks like?
Well, I think I had mentioned before that, of course, when I went through I told you the whole story, and when I completely surrendered, and then it was like my brain cracked open. For the first time, I felt like I could read. To be vulnerable here, I was 34 years old and had never read a book.
I never knew that, Mom.
Nope, never read a book because, and of course, during my education, they didn't know about testing or anything like that, and I certainly had a learning disability, and I could see words and read words, and you could get it, but I couldn't comprehend. And that was a big struggle for me in school. And so, no, anytime there was a book report due or anything, I mean, I just said, just give me a 0. It's okay. I mean, I never even attempted to read.
Wow.
And then I had convinced myself that that's a secret because something's wrong with me and I don't want to be judged. But I just gave up on it. I never read. But when I surrendered, it really was amazing because it really, truly was like my brain cracked open. And I wanted to learn. I wanted to read. And I said, if I just read one sentence and I get that. And then I started to read another sentence and another sentence. And gradually what I realized was I could read and I could comprehend. And then it just got to the point where, oh my gosh, there's a whole world out there. And I was like a sponge. I wanted to read everything I could get my hands on. And it was like a game for me. I wanted to read it, and I wanted to practice it and do an experiment and see, wow, if I do that, wonder if that works. And my life started getting better. I mean, fast. And everything got better. And so this is one of the books that I read, which is amazing. I highly recommend it. Power versus Force, David Hawkins. MD, PhD. It's science-based, and he talks in here all about emotions.
And I actually want to stop you for that just real quick before you jump into this, because I want to repeat so the listeners hear that. 34 years old, you had a 9th grade education, you had never read a book. And you guys, this book, anybody can read it, don't get me wrong, but he's an MD, PhD, it's a science, but you didn't start with a novel. You went all into some really interesting, deep, factual information. So it's not like you picked up Heidi.
No.
I mean, you just bypassed all of the fun reading and said, I want to go all in, because you weren't raised and didn't know and weren't taught what you were looking for solutions and answers of now that I've surrendered, what do I do?
Yes.
Yeah, that's big. I mean, that's huge. I just wanted the listeners to hear that, because I would love for you guys to read the book, but this wasn't a light book. This is a pretty in-depth, complex book. So you had it in you all along to retain and actually collect information at a very high level of awareness.
Well, the other thing was, where I was in life, I did not have insurance and I didn't have the money to go to a therapist, a counselor. Where else was I going to get it?
Yeah.
I had to take full responsibility for myself. And like I said in the show before, I mean, I realized that I was completely powerless and had given all of my power away. And I was dependent on everything outside of me. And so when I realized the secret is on the inside of me, and that I had created 100% of my suffering. Nobody out there did it. I did it. But if I created it, that means I could create something different. So how did I create it? I created it with my thoughts. Your thoughts create your emotions. I believed my whole life, I'm not happy because blank won't do blank. And until blank does blank, my husband does this, my kids do this, my neighbor does this, the government does this, I can't be happy. Well, I was constantly giving my power away, and I was dependent on everything outside of me going a certain way, or I couldn't be happy. I couldn't have peace. I couldn't be content. And so I was just, I was just an empty shell walking around, and I had completely given my power away. So in order to take it back, I realized, wow, to be aware of my thoughts, which I never, ever was. Because like I said, I believed everybody.
Well, who is?
Exactly.
I mean, really, who is aware that we think the voice in our head is who we are.
Right.
But they're just thoughts.
Exactly.
That's it.
But thoughts create your emotions. Mm-hmm. And so reading this book, and I realized that because I'm an extremely visual person. So I heard the words, I saw the words, but we call them positive emotions and negative emotions. And I said, wow, okay, so positive emotions go up. The energy goes up.
Because when you have a positive feeling, you feel good. Like you're lifted up. You radiate. Yes. You're lighter.
And so I saw this spiral going up. I said, wow, that's interesting. And then what we call negative emotions, which are just a lower frequency, I saw a downward spiral, and I could feel how that felt when I was in the downward spiral. And I said, wow, I was depending on everything outside of me to take me up or take me down. When I realized it's my thoughts that create my emotions, I could go anywhere I wanted to go on the emotional guidance scale. I didn't need anything outside of me to change. And so
that's what you learned in the book was about the emotions and that they came from thoughts. And then so you saw this visual that was in your mind.
Yes. Yeah. And then I started to, I said, wait a minute, I'm going to practice this. And so I came up with the scale. You want to hold that up, Yedda?
Yep.
The emotional guidance scale. Yeah.
If you're watching, if you're not watching, it's in the book. You want to definitely get the workbook, the book as well. But it's definitely, there's a visual here that we've got of the emotional guidance scale if you're watching us on video. If not, you're going to have to refer to the book. If you don't have the book, I'll give you a plug later of how to get that. So you created this visual. It has an upward spiral and a downward spiral. So talk a little bit about, because you had a graphic designer do this for you. You went to her and what did you say?
Yes. And I just told her, I gave her the words. And I said, but I want a visual because I want people to have an image to see you can move up, you can move down.
Yeah.
And so
And so another thing here too, because I've read the book, because obviously as mom was doing all her work and then I came along and I started doing my work, and as a result of it, in the book, he actually talks about the science behind emotions, which I think is really important to let our listeners know that, now that you guys know thoughts, if you've been listening to former episodes, thoughts are mental units of energy. Mm-hmm. I mean, our thoughts literally have energy.
Yes.
Those mental units of energy actually move down in through all the cells of the body. The mind is actually not in the brain. It's in the entire body because it's in every cell.
Right.
And we just think it's in the head because there's so many cells in the brain. But those mental units of energy actually are communicating with every cell in our body. And so David Hawkins actually figured out that each emotion has a frequency, measured the science behind it to say there are frequencies to emotion. And so I think it's so incredible that you were able to read all that science, having read the book, and see that list. Love is the highest frequency, fear and is the lowest frequency, and to see a visual in your mind of, so then this would look like is where you start to go down, and this is the part where you go up. So that space for you to do that, I mean, that's pretty incredible, Mom. That's not like a normal, you would expect a PhD and an MD didn't even figure out to do that. And you were able to see that in your own mind's eye. Your wisdom said, well, how do we use this instead of just read it? So you learned how to apply what you were learning into a tool that people could actually use.
Yes, and that you can absolutely feel the energy of a thought. And you can change it. And so what I do with a lot of the clients that I work with to prove this to them, I'll ask them in the beginning of the call, I said, okay, tell me where you are now. Put your finger there. So they might put it on, all right, the bottom is, let's just say number 21. Okay, but that's where you are.
So 21 might be guilt.
Yeah.
So they're in a place of insecurity or guilt, which is what you have on there. So I'm on the call and I'm like, I just feel really insecure right now about what's happening with a situation. So you have a person just literally identify it, put their finger on it, name it out loud.
Right. And it's kind of like when you're in the airport and you want to get from one gate to the other. You go to there's the map and it says you are here. You first have to determine where you are, and then you have to determine where you want to be. But you don't get there in one big leap.
Yeah.
You take one step at a time, knowing that you're headed to that gate and you will arrive there. Well, it's the same way with the emotional guidance scale. So I tell my clients, okay, so from here, I want you to reach for a better feeling thought.
So a thought would be if I'm in a place of insecurity and I want to, so I think this is great because if you guys aren't seeing the visual, fear is at the bottom of a downward kind of like an arrow going down with a spiral around it. Right. And then on the left side is an arrow going up with a big spiral. So it kind of looks like two tornadoes kind of inverse side by side. And so what's interesting is I'm not going to get from insecurity to the top of the upward scale of love just with one thought or joy.
No.
And so
it's a process.
So it's a process. And so that I think is important too, because people think, well, I have to get from here to there. It doesn't happen like that.
No.
So if I'm in a place of insecurity, reaching for a better feeling thought would be what? What would that look like? How would you get me to think of something that's in the vicinity instead of all the way of impossibility for me?
That is your work. You need to come up with a thought.
I knew she was going to do that, you guys. I call her all the time.
Better.
And I'm like, for years I'd ask her to solve my problems. And in all fairness, it was great. And Mom would do this with me. And I'm like, I don't want to put my finger on the emotional guidance scale. Right. I just want you to fix it. And you would say, but that's not my job.
Yes.
It's an inner job.
Yeah.
You take responsibility to do this, not me.
Right. Because then you become dependent on me. And so the whole journey is about becoming independent, taking your power back and realizing there's a connection between your thoughts and that you can feel the energy shift.
Yeah.
And if you can just think a different thought and create a different energy, you will feel it in your body, and then you will know, I did that.
Yeah.
Mom didn't do that.
Yeah.
Because she told me what to think.
Yeah.
I did that. And then you just rest there. You say, okay, I feel better. Hey, you know what? This works. And then from there, you say, okay, and now I am here.
And you work your way up. And it's interesting as you learn this for our listeners, but for me too, I think about this because just because you learn this once doesn't mean you've got it. Repetition is really key here for this work. You still use the emotional guidance scale. I still use it. Sometimes Mom has to remind me. I'll call. I did this as early as last week in a frustrating situation. And Mom was like, you're not in alignment. I was in a negative, frustrated spot. And if I were to use the emotional guidance scale, and that's what we did when we talked this through, but when I did that, I realized I had all these, it's funny, I picked insecurity. I was so insecure about what was going to happen, how things were going to turn out. And all of a sudden I had to stop. And I thought, what in my life do I feel secure about? And sometimes it's as simple as I might just walk around my house and go, I have a roof over my head. I have a refrigerator full of food. I do have money in the bank. I am healthy. And those simple steps go, so it's really not as bad as I'm thinking, right? Because remember, if you all listeners, if you remember from earlier episodes, the brain is Velcro for negativity and Teflon for positivity. So it requires work. But then I move up from insecurity to a little bit of worry. So now I'm from 21 up to 14. I'm a little bit worried, but you know what? Let me go through that. Well, what's a better feeling thought? Well, I'm worried because I'm actually taking on too much. I'm doing too many things. I'm not having fun. Where is the areas of my life that I'm able to show up and have a little bit of laughter or joy? And then all of a sudden I go, oh, well, then that moves me a little bit higher up.
Yes.
And so just to give you all the listeners an example that, it's a tool that you work on and you use as a recall all the time. I mean, you not only have these big images that you use with clients and that we now have in the book, you have little laminated pocket-sized ones that we give clients as well to just remind people, because we forget.
Check in.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to stay in alignment than it is to get in alignment. And it can happen gradually and we don't even know it. So especially in the early stages, check in. Where am I? Where am I? It's so much easier.
Well, and feelings, what I think is great, and I'd love for you to speak to this is, and I mentioned this in the book, thoughts can actually be measured too, but they measure up about a foot outside of our brain. This is serious, you guys. Like, there's energy. They've got machines that can measure. Your thoughts actually radiate outside of your brain, outside of your skull, up to about a foot. Some people a little bit further. Emotions can radiate 3 to 5 feet outside of our entire body. And that's what Dr. David Hawkins talked about, is in the science of emotion. That's what that means when you walk in a room and you can feel the energy of somebody else.
Yes.
So what you said of staying in alignment is so much easier when you fall out of alignment and then you got to get back in. And so the emotional guidance scale and the emotions of the energy are something to really pay attention to. And we think emotions come first because we feel them. And so I'm curious how that worked for you when you started realizing the relationship between thoughts and feelings. What happened in your life when you started to wake up? Actually, I would say you shut up and sat down and started reading and learning and creating these tools. What happened for you in your life when you started realizing, well, what if I start staying in alignment, being on the upward side of the scale, getting into love, joy, appreciation, and staying there? What happened?
My life, the more I practiced it, the better my life got, the happier I got. It's all of these emotions. When you're in the downward spiral, it's a heavy,
I know it.
feeling.
Oh, it is
when you're
dark.
going in the upward, dark. Upward is just a higher, more vibrant, light, energetic feeling. And so my life just got better. It just got better on every level.
And so it's interesting because when I started the show, I was talking about your note at the top of the page there, which I was like, Mom, you don't need notes. You've got this, which she does. Y'all, you're listening, you're watching. You're like, Mom, you got this. But I'm curious about this note at the top. You said you realized you had created your own hell.
Yes.
And so what happened when you started to feel better with that inner narrative, and some people might call that judgment? Where did that voice go that was living most of her life in that dark downward spiral? Did she go away? Did she change tone? Did she come along with you? What happened to the voice in your head when you started to shut up and actually take control of the thinking, feeling, behaving process?
Because I was looking outside of myself for everything that was already inside of me. And I was looking for love outside of me. I was looking for somebody to validate me. And when I realized, when I got quiet, when I got still, when I went beyond the voice and the thoughts in my head, there I was. And I had been there all along, waiting for me. And I started to have an outrageous love affair with me.
That's awesome.
I mean, an outrageous love affair. And I wanted to spend time with me. I wanted to get to know me. I wanted to be there for me. I wanted to be my mother. I wanted to be my child. I wanted to be my best friend. I wanted to encompass all of that and take it with me on the rest of my journey. So I started spending time with myself and becoming my own best friend. And everything I was looking for out there, whatever I wanted somebody else to say to me, I started saying to myself.
And I love this because you guys, if you heard Mom and you, what's that? I mean, seriously, you'd say this to me a lot because I had to learn to do the same thing.
Right.
And I remember you saying to me, you get in the car and you look over and you say what to yourself?
Well, when I started spending time
Yeah.
with myself, because I wanted to spend time with other people and I wanted them to make me happy. And what I realized was even if it was possible, it was only temporary. When I realized that I am going to wake up to me
for the rest of your life.
For the rest of my life.
You are your ride or die.
For the rest of my life, I'm going to be in here with me. I'm going to be my roommate for the rest of my life. There's nobody else in here.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go
and there's no guarantee that nobody else is going to be there with you. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in life. But
that's still outside
That's exactly
of me.
it. Everything outside of you is outside of your control.
Everything I was looking for was on the inside. And I said, and every night I'm going to go to bed with me for the rest of my life. So wouldn't it just make perfect sense? It would be like being a conjoined twin. Wouldn't it make sense that they got along with each other? I mean, that would be a real hell. That would really be a hell. Okay? And I said, I'm going to fall in love with myself. I'm going to have an outrageous love affair. And I'm going to start spending time with myself. And so I started designating these, what I called a frolic. And I said, I'm going to take myself on a frolic. And so I would get in the car, and before I would even start the car, I would look over at the passenger seat and I would say, like that was me.
Yeah.
Darling, where do you want to go today? And then I would just listen. I
love that. And as silly and as simple as my sisters and I have made that over the years with my mom, because she is so fun and creative, the truth is, we're not programmed to talk to ourselves with that type of inner narrative.
No, it's just the opposite.
Right. We're
You're
not programmed.
Worthless.
Yeah, the I'm not enoughness, and that's what this whole chapter helps you dig into, is what part of the belief system of your is driving, because really a belief system is just a thought you keep thinking to the point you don't even realize you're thinking it.
Autopilot.
So when people come in and tell me their quote unquote truth, now I'm like, but actually that's just a belief that you hold because you've thought that thought for so long. You think it is your reality, but it's just a thought.
And life is just confirming
exactly
what you already believe. So if you don't know what you believe, take a look at your life.
Yeah.
It's telling you.
And that's what we talked about when we taught the climbing the ladder of inference in chapter 2, was your beliefs actually then start to unconsciously filter the data that you pick out. And so on the episode, and Robin was here and we were talking about, just giving an example, from the perspective Robin's at behind the camera, if he looks at the data in the room, what he sees is totally different than what I see. Well, if you extrapolate that out into reality, everybody who walks down the street into any room, into any relationship or any conversation is filtering what they're seeing by what they're believing. And so if you don't like what you're seeing, you have to change the belief system that is filtering it. And that's why I love this work, because as you and I were talking on the drive down here today, the problem that we are solving for with Shut Up and Sit and with this work is we were looking for the answers and it wasn't out there. I mean, it was in pockets and parts and pieces. And if you look in the back of the book for Shut Up and Sit, I can't tell you how many hundreds of books I've put in there as a reference that we've read. I mean, I think for me, I'm up to over 500 books now. I can't even imagine how many you and Pop have read on this, because the parts and pieces are all over the world. All the saints and sages and wisdom, it's out there. But the question was, well, if what I'm believing is not getting me what I want in life or what I need, or not bringing me alignment or love or joy, then what's the process to go within? And for me and for us, it was to shut up, sit down and go within and say, well, what do I believe? Oh, it comes from a thought. Well, what am I thinking? Okay, well, now I got to figure out what I'm thinking. Oh, those thoughts are then biologically creating and moving energy throughout the cells of my body, which are creating an emotion, which then ultimately drives my behavior. Because on this what I love about the emotional guidance scale, if I'm on a downward spiral, my behavior that I'm going to be drawn to do is going to be to numb, to shame, to blame, to get away from the negativity as fast as I can. That's why we started the whole book was on health and wellness, because every health behavior, and you heard me say this on the episode with JJ, what inner need does my worst habit fulfill? So the inner need that you were in when you told your story about the habit for you was drinking. What inner need does drinking solve or fulfill for me? You can't just remove the habit without meeting the need in some manner and some form. And so what I'm hearing you say is you learned how to remove the habit that wasn't really meeting the need truly. And then you did the discovery to say, well, the inner need that I have is to be a companion to be a friend and be like you said, outrageously in love with who I am. And if I don't love me, nobody's going to love me. Really, truly love me, because we can't give to others or expect others to give to us what we don't first possess. And you taught me that through this work.
Yes, and what happens is we become just like the little beggar walking around with the beggar's cup. Oh, please, just give me just a little crumb. Just give me a little something, because I have nothing. And when you do this work and you become empowered, independent, and nothing outside of you can take that away from you, you are operating from a place of abundance where not only are you full, it's more than enough. It's not just enough. It's more than enough. It's like it bubbles up and there's this overflow and you just want to give it away. You don't need anybody to do anything or give you anything. That's the most powerful person in the room.
Yep.
I don't care how many people are in the room, and people respond to that energy.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're drawn to it like moths to a flame.
Oh, yes.
Well, I am going to have to interrupt you and tell you for a second, I do have an outside need that is going to control you. And I'm just going to remind you to stay close enough to your microphone so that we can hear you.
Oh.
Because you love to move around so much that when you back up, I don't want our listeners to miss anything that you're saying.
Okay.
And this is all new. Mom begged me, could she take the headphones off? She didn't want to do that. I'm like, look, we all look like Lhasa Apsos here on the video. The headphones aren't attractive. They sound weird in all your ears. It's all new stuff. But I'm just going to remind you of that. And so as our listeners are listening, and you're right, people are drawn. I mean, they're moths to flames, literally. You know, this whole conversation about being is so much more powerful than doing. And so I can remember years of doing the personal development, doing the rituals, doing all the activities, and still not feeling like I had gotten there. And I remember years of being frustrated, going, I'm doing everything. I'm paying for the seminars. I'm following the gurus. I'm going out there and I'm doing everything. And the message that was missing and this skill that is missing was going, wait a minute, the solution was to shut up and sit down and learn to fall in love with me, to be the love of my own life, to be the best version that I could be, instead of the second-rate version of what somebody else thought I should be. And so that for me is why I love the emotional guidance scale, because, and I'm still getting, Mom will tell you, she still gets phone calls and she's like, you're out of alignment. And I'm like, oh, and you sometimes you just got to battle with it, because the contrast is an incredible teacher. And I'd love for you to take a second to talk about that. It's not that we don't want to ever be on the negative downward spiral. Again, that's the way life works. Things happen. We learn how to go up it, down it, all around and all through it. But can you talk a little bit about what the contrast of a opposing emotion? I'm not big into, I know it's positive and negative for the sake of energy and high vibration, low vibration, but the contrasting, what does being on the negative side or having a contrasting emotion teach us? What's the value of that?
Well, it gives us contrast for clarity. So what we typically want to do is we want to label things and say, oh my God, this is awful, this is terrible, I can't believe this is happening to me. Or we resist an emotion. But it's better to sit with it and say, what is it showing me? What is it saying to me? Mm-hmm. And so then use that as, okay, so now I clearly know exactly what I don't want. So when I did the work and I got clear, I was single then, but I did believe in marriage and knew that I wanted to be married. I just wasn't ready to be married. But I looked back at my history and I looked at everything through a different lens now. Instead of blaming everybody for everything, my former husband, I said, okay, I got a lot of contrast to give me a lot of clarity. And I wrote it down. So as a result of that, and now I can be grateful for that, because it taught me what I do want. I know exactly what I do want now. And so that's when I started making my list. If I would ever get married again, I knew exactly what I wanted, because I knew exactly what I didn't want.
So that let go of some of the victim narrative. And I do love this about you, Mom, because
Yes.
in our family, and you guys will see as you get to the end of the book when you read it, we don't live in that victimization, the blame. Even when you heard Mom tell her story and she was talking about, Chris, my father, and then, my dad, and then Pop, even the way you tell the story now is with deep appreciation and love and gratitude for whatever might not have worked, or what might have been labeled as pain or dysfunction or abuse or negative. You now have the perspective through doing this work to say, I don't need to keep telling that story. And I'm so grateful that it guided me to what I do want and where I do live and where I do choose to be, which is in a positive. And we still have things that come up as a family that cause emotion or distress or heartache. But how does that help you to manage things that may or may not be within your control, but that also may or may not be something that feel positive? How does the emotional guidance scale work? You've nailed that for yourself, but how do you use it when you are in a situation that you do see other people suffering, or you do see things that do cause a negative emotion? What happens for you in that context?
I'm not sure I understand.
So, well, think about this, because I'm just thinking about family situations that come up, whether it's me or one of my, siblings, and you see one of us suffering. How do you hold space that we're in our own journey on the emotional, right? The thinking, feeling, behaving, and then you're in your own. So that codependency line has disappeared for you. So you don't come running in and try to force this on us. But how do you encourage other people to use the emotional guidance scale if they don't know about it, or they do and they still aren't using it? Just want you to share with the listeners a little bit about that, because I think that's important. We don't want to go running, shoving this down other people's throats. We might have listeners who say, that's great, Austine. I'm loving this book. I'm loving the work, yet I'm loving the emotional guidance scale, but I live with somebody, or I'm witnessing people in my family who don't operate from that perspective. What do you do then?
Well, I could certainly offer this information to them, but it's their work.
Yeah.
It's their stuff. It's not my work, it's their work.
Yeah. And I think that's important for our listeners to hear, that take personal responsibility. Honesty, awareness, and responsibility are really three key things here, that when you start to do this work and you want to get honest with yourself and you want to have your awareness expand and you want really to take responsibility, it can feel a little tempting to say, oh, well, then I got to run out and tell everybody else to do this. And the truth is that, again, I'll say this every episode, the other person's inner landscape is none of our business. And you do a great job as our mom to hold space to say, it's not, oh, look at you, I know better than you, and I'm not suffering and you are, but you still sometimes, your heart hurts and you see people suffering, but you know that if we do the work, we'll find the inner freedom. And that's a space as a mom, and I know this with my own son, that I don't want to see him suffer, but I've had to learn the hard way too. I can't do the work for him either. And so if I stay in a space of high emotion and high vibration and awareness of my thoughts, sometimes I still slide backwards, but the quicker I can get into alignment in my inner world, the easier it is to manage what's going on the outer world. Right. And that's really the
and
point.
Also to realize that everything that's going on out here on the outside, it's all neutral.
Yeah. Oh.
It's just like
the first time you told me that, I was like, yeah, you're knucking futz. I'm like, okay, whatever, Mom.
It's all neutral. Our suffering is caused by our thoughts about what's happening out there. And that we can change in any moment, moment.
Well, I think that kind of goes back to what they talk about in mindfulness, that pain in life is going to be inevitable, but suffering is optional.
True.
And so it's our thoughts about what we're experiencing that create suffering. So there is a difference, you guys, between pain and suffering. And what the whole point of the emotional guidance scale is to help you figure out the thoughts I'm thinking, what energy is that sending into my body? Because your feeling is the fastest way to find out what's going on in your life is ask yourself, how am I feeling? Do I feel love? Do I feel joy? Do I feel depression? Do I feel negativity? And, again, I don't want to harp on, this isn't just positive psychology. Think your way into a better reality. But the truth is, once you wake up, you shut up, you sit down, and you become aware of, oh, these are just thoughts. Oh, my mind is not in control of me. I'm actually in control of it.
Yes.
That's the real key here. And when I foster thoughts that take me to emotions that are light and joyful and take me up in energy, what happens is I then change my entire reality, because like attracts like. People like that, want to be around you. When you go into situations, environmental places, the energy, you want to be around energy that feels good. So everything in your life begins to shift. When you feel better, all of life begins to feel better. And so this scale, I still, I use it all the time. I've got several at home. And sometimes mom does have to remind me. She just has to say, you've gotten out of alignment. You got to get back into it. And I just recently had to make a really big decision with business stuff. And it was, I'm not in alignment. Every time I get on this call or I do these things, I feel awful. And what I had to do was, well, when do I feel better? And mom, that's what you helped. You said, Yedda, when are you doing things that you do feel love, joy, appreciation? And I said, one of them is when I put those headphones on and I go down and we talk at the studio and we're hanging out at the mindfulness bar and we're sharing information. She goes, great, do more of that. And so the more I had to just fine tune it and go, yeah, I'm doing things. My thoughts, my feeling, my behaving is actually creating the outcome that I don't want. So it was a quick pivot. And then I made the decision. I started doing different thoughts led to different feelings, which led to different outcomes. And the whole shift happens within minutes of figuring that out. Minutes, because I called you back later that day. I'm like, you're not gonna believe what happened. I made this decision, went in this direction, and all these other things opened up, because the energy of our thoughts is radiating not just in our body, and the emotions are 3 to 5 feet outside of us. They're mixing in the energetic soup of all that's happening in the universe. Really. And so those little mental units of energy are floating around. And this is a whole nother, not just an episode, it's a whole nother podcast on quantum physics, that they've done research that they've taken atomic particles and separated them, left some here in the US, took some over in Europe. What they did to the particles in here in the US, the ones on the other side of the Atlantic responded in the same way, because it's all energy. So if that can happen to subatomic particles, what do you think happens in the energetic emotional soup of people? I mean, we have power. So you did the work, which radiated out for me to do the work, which then, my immediate circle, my family, then, my friends were affected by it. So the whole idea of putting these headphones on and getting on the show and doing all this wonderful content-based experiential marketing for you guys is to put that energy out into the world. It's not to just, get a quick fad. This stuff is life-changing. You've seen it, I've seen it. So we're here because we want the whole world to see it. Kind of reminds me, I'm actually thrown off a little bit on my thought now. You remember when I was a kid, I used to love to watch Twilight Zone?
Yes.
And so when I would watch Twilight Zone, I was fascinated by TV as a kid. Oh my God, TV and books. Oh, imagination. And I remember there were 2 of my favorite episodes, but one was this guy the whole show starts with this guy in this white padded cell, and he's in the straitjacket. And you know how the guy would narrate, and it was very serious, and he would tell you what was happening. And so this guy's in this crazy cell, and what had happened was he had figured out the secret to life. But the minute he told somebody, they would go crazy. They would go insane. So they had him padded up in a room so that he couldn't tell anybody else the secret. So it's kind of like the virus, unfortunately we're in the middle of COVID. It's like trying to contain so nobody could get access and be exposed to him. And so the long and short of the show was a little nurse, helper went in there to give him some stuff and medicine or whatever, and wasn't supposed to go in. And he whispered in her ear the secret. And she immediately went crazy. And then she got out and she started telling everybody in the town. And by the end of the episode, everybody was crazy. And the last scene of the show was the guy in the padded cell had broken into the radio station and had the microphone and turned the light on to record and put the headphones on and was getting ready to tell the whole world the secret. And the show ended. And I remember going, oh my God, we're all going crazy. So here we are today on these headphones and the microphones, and I just had that memory, and I thought that's the power of our voice and our energy of communication and of sharing what we're learning. And this doesn't exist out in the mainstream. People have not been taught what are thoughts, how do they involve emotions, how do emotions drive behavior. And as we get further into the episodes, and we're going to have Mom come back lots. She's already got, I think, a Dolly Parton curly blonde wig in her mind's eye. I think she wants to just do different personas for different episodes. But having you come back and having a lot of other folks come in on this show, because this is a new way of showing up. This is a pattern interruption to teach people thoughts, feelings, behaving, and this emotional guidance scale, which when Mom created this visual, tell the story about that. You created the visual and you posted it on the internet.
Yes.
And what happened?
Because I was doing a lot of coaching then, and people said, "Oh my gosh, this is amazing. It really works. You need to sell this." And I said, no, I can't sell something that was a gift to me. And it really was. And I knew the power in it. And I said, I want to put it out into the ethers, and I want to make it available to everybody. I didn't want to get business through that. I didn't want people to contact me. There's no phone number on there. I just put my logo.
I do have her phone number if y'all want it.
Anyway, the most amazing, I just forgot about it. I just sent it out there and forgot about it. Unbelievable. People would call me literally from all over the world and say, I found this on Google. I know you have the copyright. Could I please use this in my book? Could I use this in my coaching? Could I post this at work? Could I sell I said, it is yours to do with as you wish. Whatever you do with it.
Yeah.
It's
wonderful. I love that. I love that you put that out there. And I remember seeing a post on Facebook where somebody tagged you. And I was like, and he's a top coach for Tony Robbins. And I remember looking at it going, that's my mom. And he's talking about the best image he'd ever seen. And so, this really is important that you came here today, Mom, to talk about this and to share with us what this is, how to use the emotional guidance scale, how it liberated you. I can't stop talking enough about how that liberation then helped me to liberate myself. And now we are liberating the world. I mean, we are on the microphone. Everyone's listening, and maybe they will all go crazy. I don't know. But I love that we're imparting information that are helping people to move past limiting beliefs and ways of life. Because here's the deal, guys, if you're listening and gals, life does not have to be as hard and as difficult as we are making it. Are there certain circumstances out there at play? Could I get into some different conversations with those of you listening where you could probably say, but Yedda, you don't understand. I will tell you, and you've heard me say this on one of the other episodes, Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, in Auschwitz, being grateful, controlling his mindset.
Yes. To
say every morning, the bucket of dirty water with rotten fish heads in it, I'm so grateful that I get to drink this. It helped him to survive. It's actually called Tragic Optimism, and that's another episode. It's in the back of his book. So you can be in a place of suffering and tragedy, but hold space that something else could get in or get out by learning to really work with the power of the mind, and that's what he says in his book. So as we begin to wrap up today, I really wanted you guys to hear from Mom because of how she used it. She did create the image, the graphics all over the world. It's in the book. The value, and I know Mom's given the image away for free, and you guys are welcome to Google that. The value of us offering the book and the workbook and really wanting to just give you a call to action to go order the book or the workbook at shutupandsit.com is simply this. We've compiled thousands and thousands of pages of reading, hundreds of books, all these different tools and techniques that are all over the world into a process, not to tell you to do what we did exactly, but there's a framework and a guide that you can step-by-step walk through to figure out how that works for you in your life. So I'd love for you to go check that out. You can go to shutupandsit.com. It tells you a little bit about the work. Click the little accept button and it'll tell you the different products and how to get involved and how to order those. Not only does it give you a consolidated place for you to do all the work, it supports the show. And even though Mom does do this for free, it is value that we're putting out in the world. We'd love for you to have that as a tool. You're going to revisit this content. My clients revisit it all the time in the book and they go, wait a minute, what was that thing that you said? Oh, the emotional guidance scale. So let me go back and let me revisit that because we're giving you a lot of information. So that's one thing I want to just make sure you guys know where it is, how to get it, the value of that. And another thing, each episode we've talked about, you're gonna hear somebody's story. So you've heard more of Mom's story today. We've talked about a tool or a technique we're gonna teach you today was the emotional guidance scale. And another thing that I said was every time you guys hopped on and listened to an episode, you would hear another example of mindfulness. And so yes, can the emotional guidance scale be a mindfulness tool where you can shut up, sit down, put your finger on the emotion, read the book and work yourself through it? Absolutely. But one of the things I want to close with today, which is one of my favorite mindfulness techniques and tools, a way of shutting up and sitting down with, if you will, is poetry. And poetry is woven throughout my book as well. Why is that? So you're not just getting left brain science and psychology and all these facts, but that all throughout the book, I've woven in different right brain activities, ways that you can pause, you can pattern interrupt to give you different ways. It might be questions, it might be journaling, it might be workshops or work pages in here. But poetry is in there for a reason. And I know, Mom, you love poetry.
Yes.
And a lot of the poems that are in the book are there for a place of introspection and self-reflection, really, because when we get to a place of being in poetry, we don't think about poetry. We feel poetry. Mm-hmm. And we just let it kind of just wash over us. And so today I thought what I would do is I would close you with a mindfulness tool where you can actually enjoy a brief reading. This is one of my favorite poems that's in the chapter about emotions, and it's titled The Autobiography in 5 Chapters. And I think actually, Mom, you might have been the one that shared this poem with me first. And so I'm just going to read this as we close. And so wherever you are, if you're driving, you can just listen. If you're sitting somewhere and it's safe and you're in a sacred space where you can close your eyes and just allow the words to wash over you. This is a mindfulness practice of its own, to have poetry read to you, to listen to it, or to read it yourself, and then just close your eyes and just be with the way your body feels when you're in a place of experiencing a poem. So this is Autobiography in 5 Chapters by Portia Nelson. Chapter 1, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I'm lost. I am hopeless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place, but it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It is my fault. I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. And Chapter 5, I walk down another street.
Amen.
So as you're walking down the street today, you might want to ask yourself, which chapter are you in? Mom and I have chosen to walk down another street, and we invite you to join us, to walk down that street with us. So until the next episode, it's been great to be with you, Mom. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, of course. I paid her, you guys. Our next episode coming up, we're going to be talking about the 3 different ways that we deal with emotion. So once you get past the emotional guidance scale in the book, we're going to actually be talking about there are 3 ways that people deal with emotion. We're going to help you identify what those are. We're going to teach you how to get yourself out of those habits of dealing with emotions. And we're just going to keep building on all that we've been learning. So until next time, you guys, I hope you have a great day. And thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you soon.
May you know goodness. May you know peace. May you know contentment. May you be